January 6th, that's the underlying case with Judge Chutkan. This is actually getting very interesting. So her entire proceeding is delayed. It's frozen while SCOTUS, in a separate matter that we made a reference to, tries to decide whether Trump is immune to that prosecution entirely. So it's frozen. She can't do anything on it. And Politico comes out with an article entitled, "The Enormous Pressures About to Land on Judge Tanya Chutkan." And in this piece, the author makes a reference to the fact that Jack Smith, who's both pursuing the January 6th federal case against Trump and the Mar-a-Lago documents case against Trump in Dave's jurisdiction, had an appearance before the Florida judge in the Mar-a-Lago case recently and said to that judge, Aileen Cannon, there are no DOJ policies that prevent cases that have already been charged from going to trial in the run-up to the election, even if the defendant is on the ballot. All right, notwithstanding this, supposed DOJ policy that they would not do anything to interfere with an election within 60 days of the election. They wouldn't charge a candidate. They wouldn't do anything like that because they don't want to influence the vote. Now they're saying to Judge Cannon, we're actually not going to follow that in this case. It doesn't apply because we charged him well before. And so now there's real speculation about whether Judge Chutkan should go ahead with this trial as soon as the U.S. Supreme Court gives it any sort of a green light, should rush it to trial, in fact. And the suggestion is that she could hold the trial only 3 to 4 days a week, leaving Trump the remainder to travel the country and campaign. Hold the trial on alternating weeks, allowing Trump to campaign in the weeks in between his criminal trial in D.C. Hold half-day trial days, leaving Trump the remainder of the day to travel to closer states right around Washington, D.C., and to campaign nationally through his media appearances. And then the writer goes on, and Kush Kardori, to say, you know what, the trial also does not need to even end before November, though that's far from ideal. They can keep this thing rolling, and potentially you could get him convicted even after he wins, and then he could be, I guess, kicked out, not certified. I don't know what the end plan would be if they got his conviction between November and January. But my takeaway on this, I am coming back to you, Dave, but let me just give this one to Mike first too, is that these Democrats will stop at nothing. He can campaign in the afternoon in the states around Washington, D.C. in October 2024.
Yeah, remember, they waited 30 months to bring these charges. And these are coordinated charges with the Biden White House and the Biden Justice Department. I've given you specific names in each one of these cases where they're specifically coordinating. You had Nathan Wade, for example, billing his time to meet with the Biden White House and the Biden White House counsel, right? You had Matthew Colangelo going from the Biden Justice Department, the number 3 office, to Alvin Bragg's office to bring the first indictment ever against a former president and a likely future president. You had Jonathan Sue, Biden's deputy White House counsel, waive Trump's claim of executive privilege on behalf of President Biden. So you have Biden's fingerprints on all 4 of these things. You had Biden going out there leaking that Garland was acting like a professor instead of an attorney general. And so then Garland moved forward. And we have these 4 coordinated indictments and criminal charges against Trump. And they've timed these trials back to back to back right during the 2024 presidential election season. And Jack Smith will probably convince D.C. Obama Judge Tanya Chutkan that he can do this. Maybe he'll convince Judge Cannon. But here's the deal. The legitimacy of the judicial system is on the line. When the American people start paying attention and they see President Trump in a courtroom for these bogus charges instead of on the campaign trail, this is not going to go well with the American people. And when the justice system loses its legitimacy with half of the American people, they're going to lose a lot of their funding.
I mean, Dave, if This is the Democrats' campaign strategy. This is the thing that Biden thinks will win him the election. That, as again, quoting here from Andy, who's making a reference to Adam Liptak of the New York Times outlining the possible plan. A felony trial of Trump on the January 6th charges before a hostile Washington jury pool and an unfriendly Obama-appointed judge beginning after Labor Day, running through Election Day. That is the Biden campaign strategy. It's outrageous. It could work, I guess. Do we have a judge in Judge Chutkan who would go along with this?
Megan, there is absolutely no evidence that Joe Biden has been pulling the strings on any of this stuff. Remember, he, and I would agree, is frustrated with Merrick Garland because Merrick Garland, the one thing I'll agree with what Mike said is that he slow walked a lot of this stuff. He is timid, and I don't think he was the right pick for attorney general. But he finally appointed a special prosecutor, and then it was on. Remember, this is the same attorney general who's prosecuting Joe Biden's son, the same guy who let Robert Hur become the special counsel and then release this report bashing Joe Biden's mental acuity. And as far as the Department of Justice and this 60-day rule, there has never been a rule that says you cannot try a case before the election. Just ask Senator, well, he's not around anymore, Senator Ted Stevens of Alaska. He had a trial for his fraud claims, his criminal activity in late September of the year where he was up for re-election. In fact, the jury gave a guilty verdict a week before Election Day. So this has happened before. It's not a surprise it's happening now. And if anything, I got to tell you, I think the Supreme Court was dragging its feet. I know we've talked about this, and one other thing about that, they didn't have to intervene in this matter. They didn't have to wait 2 weeks to then say, yeah, we're going to get involved. And then when they did so, even after they granted cert, they didn't have to issue a stay. And then they could have had the oral argument like now, like in March. It's all teed up. You don't have to wait till the end of April. So I look at it from a different perspective. Not only is there no coordination between Biden and the prosecutors here, but it looks like the Supreme Court has been intentionally dragging its feet to make sure justice is not served before the election and voters don't get the information they need to make a rational choice.
I'm gonna have to bust out my mother's cupboard again, aren't I, Dave? Lack of planning on your part does not justify an emergency on my part. She used to whip that thing open whenever I'd be like, Mom, I need you to pick up my school report and bring it. I forgot it. No, they drag their feet. Now it's not up to the Supreme Court to suddenly have to go faster than that aircraft carrier normally goes. It's just not how things work there. But I will say, Mike was nodding his head yes, whether Judge Chutkan could actually help them engage in this strategy on J6. But here's the thing I want to get back to. Andy's saying, Mike, the DOJ pointing out, even if Trump wins in November, and Mike Davis is his AG elect, right? Or is it the one that he's going to appoint? You will not be in power until January 20th, 2025. And he writes, remember, a president-elect is in no position to dismiss anything. There may be more than enough time between September and January to get Trump not only convicted, but sentenced. Jack Smith is banking on at least the former, the conviction, and he'll push for the latter too if it's remotely attainable. My God, so that he's I hadn't even considered this scenario, Mike, where they do press forward on J6 trial before Judge Chutkan after the Supreme Court rules, if they allow this case to go forward in any way. And I realize the whole heart of that case may get gutted by another case that they're about to hear, Fisher. That's another matter. That they might put pedal to the metal, make him do the half days or the 4 days a week, what have you. He wins the election. And between November 5th and January, they get a conviction and sentence him to prison. What happens then? Does anyone have any idea what happens then?
And that's why this Jack Smith is a Scud missile that the Democrats send in, and he is so reckless. Remember, he was overturned 9-0 when he brought his bogus corruption charges against former Virginia Governor Bob McDonnell, a likely presidential or vice presidential candidate in 2016. He was able to win his conviction and destroy Bob McDonnell's political life and personal life. And then the Supreme Court 8-0 reversed him in 2016. It would have been 9-0, but Justice Scalia passed away, right? But that's exactly who Jack Smith was. He got banished to The Hague because he is a partisan buffoon prosecutor. And then Garland brought him back as the Scud missile to take out President Trump before the election. This is all about election interference. They're not even hiding it anymore. It's very blatant that what they're doing is they're trying to interfere in the election. They don't care what the American people want. They fear American voters. And so they're trying to bankrupt, disqualify from the ballot, and put Trump in prison because they don't want the American people to put Trump back in the White House.
Okay, Dave, I think the answer to my question is we don't know, right? It's truly unprecedented to have a president-elect get convicted of a felony and be sentenced to jail after he's been elected, but before he's been sworn in. Like, I don't think we know. We're on uncharted grounds here, are we not?
Agreed. We don't know. And I get asked that question all the time. You can run for president from prison. You could technically serve as president from prison. What will be interesting, if he is convicted and then he takes office, I assume there would be a stay. I assume there'd be an appeal and his sentence would be stayed, and then he would go into the White House, and then nothing would happen until after he's out. I think that's why he's running for president.
He can pardon himself, right? Once he's sworn in, he can pardon himself.
Well, it's not clear whether that would stick. He can try. He could also resign temporarily under, I forgot which, Mike can help me, which amendment, where the vice president takes over briefly and then pardons 25th. Him. And then which one is it, Mike?
25th.
There you go. 25th. So that could happen. But, the reason why Donald Trump is running for president is because he realizes this is the best way to escape all the legal liability swirling over his head, and it may just work.
Let me tell you a story about a guy named Leo Grillo. Leo was on a road trip and came across a Doberman. This dog was severely underweight and clearly in trouble. Leo rescued the dog and named him Delta. Sadly, Delta was just one of many animals that needed help, and this inspired Leo to start Delta Rescue, the largest no-kill, care-for-life animal sanctuary in the world. They've rescued thousands of dogs, cats, and horses from the wilderness, and they provide their animals with shelter, love, safety, a home, dedication, and everlasting love to animals. That's Leo's mission and his legacy. Delta Rescue relies solely on contributions to stay open. And if you want caring for these animals to be part of your legacy, speak with your estate planner because there are tax benefits too. You can grow your estate while letting your love for animals live well into the future. Check out the estate planning tab on their website to learn more and speak with your advisor. We call dog a man's best friend for a reason. You can help those who need it most. Visit deltarescue.org today to learn more. That's deltarescue.org. Hey, thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.